Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And first we're going to start with Mykolaiv, with the Ugar Battle. As we discussed yesterday, according to Ukrainian sources, the Russians launched another attempt to storm Ugar area. Basically the Russians were trying to attack not Ugar but the three lines that located on the north of Mykolaiv. On this video we can see significant number of Russian armored vehicles that were moving from the eastern part of Mykolaiv in direction of the farms, in direction of the tree lines. We see the Russian infantry moving from one position to another. We see significant number of armored vehicles. We see one Russian truck got probably in mine or maybe was destroyed as a result of anti-tank missile. Anyway, the Russians tried to concentrate forces, and after these episodes, after these scenes, we see a significant number of destroyed Russian armored vehicles somewhere at the entrance of this village. So yet we haven't received any updates, any real geolocations about the Russian progress. The only thing we know for sure that the Russians started offensive operation. Another thing we need for sure that the Russians had losses. The only thing we don't know is whether the Russians were successful and whether the Russians managed to achieve some progress and some results. As I understand, today we're going to see these updates, and maybe we will see more details. We're gonna see more battles and so on. More updates are coming from Avdiivka direction. Very interesting videos, lots of very interesting videos and details. First, I would like to discuss with you a video that we got from the northern part of Krasnogorovka. It was probably the most weird video we've seen since the beginning of the Krasnogorovka-Avdiivka offensive operation. On this video, for example, we can see how the Russians concentrated significant number of mines somewhere on the combat line. So these are mines, and these are mines that located not somewhere in Donetsk or in the vicinity of Bakhmut. These mines are located, let's say, in 2 kilometers from the edge position, from the positions of Ukrainian forces. Of course, the Ukrainians discovered this operational warehouse, local warehouse of mines, and destroyed them with FPV drones. So I don't know what exactly did happen, who's this fault, and what is going to be next. Because from one side, the Russians have redeployed the small warehouse of mines in this direction. That means that the Russians were planning, let's say, to secure some flanks. For example, the Russians were planning to continue offensive operation further to Berdych and Stepovo, let's say, to cross the railways. And of course, the best solution for the Russians to secure their flanks and not to allow the Ukrainians to counterattack the Russians, let's say, from the north, the best solution how to secure this operation, this mission, is to create the minefields, let's say, somewhere in this area. So the Russians probably brought those mines to mine the fields on the south of the railways and the south of Novokalinova, and this would allow the Russians to prevent any counterattacks from the Ukrainian side while offensing in direction of Berdych and Stepovo. Very interesting updates are coming from the southern part of Avdiivka cauldron, and we got at least 2 geolocations from this area. First geolocation took place in Tonenka. On this video we can see how the Russians attacked or bombed this small village with FAB 500. So we see the Russian focus. We see that the Russians do have possibilities to attack this territory with aircrafts, and that the Russians probably after a few days of a small operational pause in this area took a decision to restart their offensive, and now they're trying to suppress and destroy Ukrainian position. A little bit further to the west we got some more details, more geolocations, how the Russians FPV drones were attacking and bombing the Ukrainian machines, Ukrainian armored vehicles, personal carriers that were concentrated along the tree lines between Vadiane Peski and, let's say, Tonenki Orlovka. So this is something like FPV drone preparation before further offensive operation. So based on these geolocations, I understand that the Russians are planning to start the next round, the next wave of offensive operation from the line between Vadiana Opitne to the north in direction of Tonenki and Severne. If you remember, yes, the River has already reported that this territory was captured. Maybe this is exactly the current situation, but for now we got just these geolocations. Furthermore, very interesting updates are coming from Donetsk itself, from Avdiivka direction itself. The Russian military forces in this area received the new type of drones by the name of Scalpel. This is the next generation drone of Lancet. This is like the third generation, this newest version of this type of weapon, very powerful one, Scalpel, and the Russians are planning to test and to use them for the first time in combat, in massive combat usage on Avdiivka direction. So obviously the Ukrainians are going to receive significant level of damage on this direction. Now we're moving further to, we will bypass Bakhmut, Artyomovsk area. We have some updates, but we need more details, and we will discuss them in the evening update, the evening summary. And now we will talk about like Jabas River, another very important area where the Russians launched a very powerful attack. Today the Russians published another video of the usage of Ulmur missile, very interesting video. On this scenes, on this screen, you can see the fly of Ulmur. The Russian missile tried to bypass the different, like the different kind of barriers, the terrain, the hills, and at some moment the Russian missile discovered the Ukrainian position in this village Makiivka. Then the missile started self-navigating, self-coordinating, and after that the target was hit and the Ukrainian position was destroyed. Also, we got the video on the line between Nevska and Novosadova. On this video we can see how the Russians, also using FAB 500, bombed the Ukrainian positions on the entrance and on the exit points of the main supply roads that goes through the river of Jabas. And this is not the first attack against this foothold, against these Ukrainian positions. If we increase the number of updates from let's say this area from Nevska, Makiivka, Terny area, we're going to see significant number of geolocations just for 3 days. And as you can see, yesterday we have already discussed the bombardments of this area with FAB 500. And as you can see, the Russians are very focused, and we know this is the pattern, or either the Russians and the Ukrainian forces. If we see concentration of artillery fire or FPV drone fire, that means that in a day, in a 2, or in a month, we're gonna see significant offensive operation. So obviously the Russians tried to suppress the Ukrainian defense belt on the line between Terny, Yampolovka, Terny, Tarske, Novosadova, Nevska, Makiivka. They tried to suppress the Ukrainian positions with missiles. They tried to cut the supply roads, and maybe even before the end of this week, we're gonna see another reconnaissance in combat or reconnaissance in force operation. More updates are coming from the battle, Stepovo, Novoselovka, Ivanovka, Orlovka, Yagidne. The Russians continue bombardment and attacking the Ukrainian positions, but today the Ukrainians published some videos how they were bombing the Russian forces, and we are using this video just to clarify the geolocation, clarify the combat line, and to understand the exact position of the Russian forces. So every single line in this area is confirmed by geolocation and by something. On this video we see the Ukrainian clearing operation. If you remember, during the previous days, the Russians made a very powerful offensive operation against the road that connect Petropavlovka and Orlyanka, and where the Ukrainians lost a few Leopard tanks. The Russians were attacking this area with tanks, with FPV, with personal carriers, with armored carriers. And on this video, we see a significant number of abandoned armored vehicles, and the Ukrainians were bombing these vehicles with FPV drones. They know that the Russians don't have chances to evacuate. The Russians know this as well, so they just destroyed the abandoned vehicles. And now we will finish with Kherson direction. The clashes for the Russian bank of the river continues. The Ukrainians launched another wave or the second round of FPV drone strikes against the Russian positions. This is the pattern as we discussed. We saw the same picture in Bakhmut before the Ukraine launched their offensive operation in direction of Klishchevka and Andreevka. Now we see the same story on the Russian bank of the river. Significant number of usage of FPV drones, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, and the main purpose is, of course, to cut the supply roads, to destroy as much as possible vehicles, to damage and wound as much as possible soldiers, and then the Ukrainians will launch another landing operation trying to develop their foothold in this area. If we increase the number of updates since the 1st of October, we're gonna see the concentration of Ukrainian FPV drone strikes. As you can see, significant number of FPV drone strikes against significant number of FAB 500 bombardments of the Ukrainian bank. So we'll see what tactic is more effective. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds you, we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Put your likes to my Patreon. And have a good day. Bye bye.